The super skinny trend is back. I made a video a couple of years ago talking about how I could see that it was making its gradual return and that I hoped I was wrong. But given how we know body and beauty standards are weaponized against women, and certainly with the rising popularity of Ozempic and GLP-1s, it was kind of inevitable. But you'd have to be off pretty much every single kind of media to have missed the way that we're currently talking about this. And it's with a very individual focus on the public women, celebrities, influencers who appear to have gone through a pretty significant amount of weight loss in a very short period of time. I'm not here to comment on anybody's individual body, but what comes along with that commentary is also a lot of judgment, shaming, and blaming. I understand that from the perspective of these are women who already hold a lot of privilege and a lot of power, and they are now exemplifying a beauty and body standard which works against us all, which proliferates a message which is harmful to women, girls, which upholds beliefs about how women can be safe, how they can belong, how they can have happiness, love, success. And when it's tied to a body which is potentially dangerous, I completely understand the instinct to point your finger at that person and make them individually culpable for contributing to that message, which is destructive for us all. I also understand how disappointing it is. I've now been on the planet long enough to see enough waves of this with the hope that we were just eventually going to see it go away, that we knew too much now. We knew too much about fat phobia. We knew too much about how diet culture and eating disorders intersect, that no, diet culture doesn't necessarily create eating disorders, but it certainly does exacerbate and normalize and make it harder for us to catch the problem and address the problem for so many people. I had the same hope. I did not actually think that that was necessarily going to be the outcome because we just know how profitable this kind of messaging is. We know that there are way too many industries which are incentivized to keep putting this kind of beauty and body standard at the top of the pyramid. And that now includes Ozempic and GLP-1s. It's no longer just diet programs, exercise programs, which have famously prescribed women calorie intakes for toddlers. There's now another level of incentive from a booming part of the medical industry to put this body standard and beauty standard back on the top of the pyramid. And that's what I think is missing in these conversations when we're just pointing at individual women through this lens of blame. Because my position in these discussions is always attack the system, don't attack the individual. This group of women who continue to be highlighted as the problem, they weren't around in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Beauty and body standards being weaponized against women and being used as tools for control is not new. Even if we just look at the last 70 years, there are multiple examples of this decade by decade. In the 1940s, women entered the workforce in a way they never had before, in numbers they never had before, and in roles they never had before. Men had gone away to war, and women were required, desperately needed to keep the economy going. They entered industrial spaces, they worked in factories, they worked in clerical roles. And with the return of those men, women didn't want to give up those roles freely. They had tasted a level of autonomy and freedom they otherwise wouldn't have had access to. So they needed to be incentivized to return to the home. And this propaganda machine, it wasn't just in terms of the national pride which was being pumped out to citizens post-war, it was also specifically targeted towards women. Think of the body and beauty standard you associate with that time. People like Marilyn Monroe, Sophia Loren, incredibly voluptuous, maternal, hyper feminine ideals, which sent the message of you are needed in the home. You are needed as a wife and a mother. That is your role in this post-war recovery. That beauty and body standard directly reflects what was politically, culturally, and economically required from women at that time. All of that changes as we enter the 1960s. Women want access to contraception, higher education, careers. And all of a sudden, we see the body and beauty standard shifting drastically to Twiggy, a childlike, androgynous, very small-bodied example of what a woman needs to be in the 1960s. That is the prevailing body and beauty standard. Women no longer want to be infantilized, and the beauty and body standard which is being held up for them is infantilization, disempowering. It is a beauty and body standard which for most women can only be accessed if they are not eating enough, if they are not nourishing themselves enough, if they are not powering their brains and their abilities to be able to access the things they are now very vocally saying they want access to. We then go into the 1980s, where women have been able to enter academic spaces, now corporate spaces, but the beauty and body ideal continues to be small. It is now either hyper athletic, think Jane Fonda, or it is hyper androgynous. Think of sort of the suits and the outfits, which were really upheld as chic and fashionable at the time. It required this coat hanger up and down sort of silhouette and still very, very small bodied, very, very low fat percentage. Then we enter the 1990s, and feminism is now culturally loud and increasingly unapologetic. It's a word which more and more women freely associate themselves with. It's much less of a dirty word. It's much less sort of culturally contained to only a certain segment of the population who are engaged with women's lib. Women are accessing sexual autonomy and freedom in a way they haven't previously, and normalizing that sexual autonomy. What's the beauty and body standard? Heroin chic. Kate Moss, still very small, still very childlike, straight up and down, low fat percentage. It's not a coincidence that post 50s, this beauty standard, regardless of the form it comes in, whether it's athleticism or it's corporate or it's androgynous or it's childlike, the common denominator is smallness. After a long period of conservatism globally, we see Obama elected in 2008, and within a couple of years, the body and beauty standard shifts again. It returns to something that is curvy, more maternal, but it's still unattainable. This is where we see the proliferation of things like BBLs and women accessing cosmetic and plastic surgery in numbers we have never seen before. Those industries just explode because there's always a new industry lining up to take advantage of emerging body and beauty standards, which they have also influenced because they're incentivized to. They create the problem, they convince you it's a problem, and then they offer you the solution, which usually has a price tag attached to it. And the expectation is still to be small bodied. It's just now with these proportions, which for most women are totally unattainable without some major surgery, which lands us in 2020 onwards with the return of the super skinny beauty and body ideal, which just so happens to coincidentally be running parallel to not just a rise in conservatism, Bush-style conservatism, but ultra conservatism. Roe v. Wade overturned, the rolling back of women's rights and bodily autonomy, not just in America, but as I unpacked on my Pod Like a Girl podcast just last week, it's showing up here too. They're trying to roll back our access to healthcare. This is not a coincidence because this is also happening alongside women showing up in education in greater numbers than men, women out earning their partners, their male partners, like never before. Women showing up in property ownership in greater numbers than men. This is intentional. It is a distraction. It is an effort to punish women. It is a method of behavioral control. I know this is somebody who has navigated an eating disorder. I know this is somebody who has worked with thousands of people for almost a decade as I help them to recover from their eating disorders. If you are not eating enough, you have very little brain power to put towards anything other than your body's ability to survive. 20% of what you eat every single day goes to your brain function. And that is if you are eating enough. If you are not eating enough, you are not nourished enough to be able to operate within your own life, let alone pay attention to what is happening politically, what is happening culturally, what is happening economically, what is happening to women. If it sounds conspiratorial, it's depressingly simple how this happens. Every single major media company is owned by a man, whether that's new media or traditional media. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, you name any major studio, you name any major streaming service, it is owned by men. If they are incentivized to put a certain image in front of you, to sell you a certain beauty and body standard, to attach that to messages of belonging, safety, success, love, happiness, it is very easy for them to do so. And they are highly incentivized to do so when we look at how they benefit from women's consumption of that kind of media and the kind of marketing and advertising which gets snuck in through that messaging. Whether it is the medical industry which profits, whether it is the diet industry which profits, whether it is the cosmetic, injectables, plastic surgery industry which benefits. There is an incentive here for all kinds of industries to parrot the same kind of messaging, the same kind of ideal. And it is, yes, to make money from you. It is also to shut you up and keep you quiet and keep you disengaged. So you don't have the energy, time, or focus for what is happening in the wider world, which directly impacts you. And you won't notice it until it's too bloody late. So that is why the approach of attacking, shaming, blaming individual women is futile. I personally believe it's not the right thing to do, but it's also pointless. It is not where our energy is best spent. Part of my job as an eating disorder recovery coach, whether it's in the minutiae of my client work or in the broad nature of my advocacy work, is to help you zoom out and try to find the bigger picture, is to try to help you figure out why something is happening. There is no coincidence here. There is no conspiracy here. This is historically true. And no individual woman is responsible for that. I would actually say there isn't a woman in a position of power who is responsible for that. So much of recovery is about your value system. So much of it is about connecting back to who you are and how you want to show up in the world. And for me, deconstructing all of this diet culture, body standard, beauty standard stuff was so essential for my recovery. It's why I love my job. It's why I love working with people. Not because we're ticking off meal plans, not because we're helping them reduce behaviors. That's all stuff we do. We do all the amazing practical stuff and help people to achieve their goals week to week, month to month, year to year. But when we're talking about getting people well, we're also talking about how to keep them well long term. And a big part of our work is to show people systems and structures like this, how these things are weaponized against you, how they actually are totally in conflict, probably with your value system. Now more than ever, it is so important for us to collectively reject these messages, collectively reject what is trying to be achieved here. And a big part of that is not falling into the lie that this is about any individual woman or any group of women, no matter how privileged or powerful you might think they are. In every other metric, absolutely. In terms of this, we just don't know what somebody is going through. We just don't know what they're experiencing or why. And yes, part of it is because they are likely the first ones to receive this messaging, absorb this messaging, and are required to be obedient to that messaging in ways that a lot of people will never be. And there's just so much that is complicated about people's relationship with food, body, etc., that we can't hold them responsible for what is happening culturally when it is so much bigger and broader than that, which I really hope I have helpfully demonstrated today. I'm thinking about maybe diving into this a little bit deeper on Pod Like a Girl and extrapolating out on some of this historical stuff, but also getting into the nuance of how we can just not know from looking at somebody exactly what's going on with them or their level of ability or control over their decisions and why they might be doing what they're doing. But just the overly simplified, very blamey way in which we have spoken about these women more recently has been really concerning for me, because that's another way we're keeping our eye off the ball. If we're just making it about us and not the systemic reasons why this happens, that's just another method of control and distraction which keeps our eye off where it needs to be, which is politically what is happening on the home front. So thanks for joining me for this one. Thinking about doing some more of these to camera videos. Let me know if there's anything you ever want me to talk about. Come and find me on Instagram and TikTok under What Mia Did Next. You can come and find us at Beyond Body Coaching. We have some upcoming spots for clients, particularly in the new year, if you're thinking about adding maybe some practical support to your recovery. And I'm potentially going to be bringing on a new coach so that we can get help out to people who want to work with us. And yeah, we've got some exciting stuff coming for 2026. And we'll see you across the channel one way or another very soon.